Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Revenue Rebels podcast. Today on the show we have Steve Wright, and we're really excited for today's episode. So Steve Wright is the Director of Mid-Market Sales at Synergis, a total experience workforce solutions partner. Over the last 25 years, Synergis has helped their clients achieve transformational business outcomes by stitching together employee, customer, and user experience. In other words, they connect rockstar employees with the right companies that enable them to grow, thrive, and build long-lasting careers. And Steve started their mid-market division after 25 years of Synergis, primarily just serving enterprise customers. So today we'll be learning about why did they start a mid-market division and how mid-market can be a new gold mine in 2024 and beyond. Welcome, Steve. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Max.
Awesome. Before we dive in, maybe just tell us a little bit of background on yourself, maybe where you're from and what brought you to Synergis in the first place.
Career-wise, 32 plus years in sales with a technical background, cut my teeth in hardware, services, sold outsourcing in healthcare. I had a entrepreneurial stint overseas in Prague for 2.5 years where I had a publishing company. I'm a technology enthusiast at the end of the day. I'm a geek and I really enjoy that kind of stuff. So this has really fed that passion along with helping people find that next career evolution that they've got. And from a Synergis perspective, I joined 5 years ago, really because of the integrity and ethics, as well as the delivery engine that we've got behind us, which is ever so important when you're talking about talent solutions and working with people.
And however, let's dive into sales things. So yeah, diving right into it, Synergis was basically just focused on enterprise for 25 years. Why start a mid-market division?
With very fruitful relationships, high volume, really good opportunity to be able to do some project work as well as traditional staffing solutions. But where I come from and kind of where I get into it, given that I've got a little bit deeper technical background, is I love working directly with the managers, right? I love understanding solutions, digging into that side of things. So when I had the conversation with the owner of the company, he's like, well, follow that passion, follow that arena. So it was really more of an opportunity to be able to go and explore a new part of the market segment that wasn't necessarily a big piece of the revenue with Synergis, which is another reason why I joined the company and being able to take those directions and kind of run with it. And it's just thrived. It's been phenomenal. So if you think about from a sales perspective, right, here I am in an organization who's been serving these, Fortune, 50 plus organizations and these, all of these mid-market companies, it's been a greenfield where a lot of other companies, there's an army of salespeople and they already have relationships in those organizations. So I had this opportunity to tell this great story of this 25-year organization who's honed their processes, has a delivery team who's been around, and we've got tenured recruiters on staff for 20 plus years, and be able to go to market in a whole new group of people who've heard of Synergis, but have never really experienced the work that we've been able to deliver.
As you got started kind of creating this new mid-market division, how did you think about rewriting the sales playbook, to be more agile for mid-market?
Given I didn't have a sales team, right? I wasn't director of mid-market at that time, right? It was, hey, let's create the market first. So the best practices that I had brought to the table that I had learned from, 10 years at other firms, I kind of brought that all with me. But if you think about the sales cycle in a contingent labor business, when you're talking the large enterprise, you've got to get in the door. It's a top-down kind of exercise. You're talking C-suite. You are going through procurement. You're having conversations with financial side. You've also got a managed services provider, MSP, who's a relationship that sits between the staffing companies and the hiring managers themselves, right? So mid-market breaks all that down. It's far like I could talk to one director and he could have strategic, tactical, and contract signing abilities and responsibilities, which is fantastic, right? But rewriting that, you have to address, when you talk about rewriting that playbook, you have to address all those concerns with that individual. And really a lot of that might end up being helping them establish some more solid processes for a business that might be comprised of 500 employees or 2,000 employees, but they may have been around for a while in manufacturing, but they don't have a huge technology department or a creative or digital department. And we have to kind of educate more than working with a large enterprise who already has all this stuff established and way to go, where you have to learn that versus creating it.
Yeah, what's an example as you got started about a playbook or sort of a strategy that did work in the enterprise? You tried it in the mid-market and it failed. Like it didn't work and then you had to change things up.
So I think probably one of the biggest challenges is when you're selling into the large enterprise, you try to break down these sales steps, right? There's a longer cycle to get into these longer ones, developing relationships and rapport, where within mid market, it's really all over the place. You could get in, your sales cycle could be 4 weeks, it could be 3 months. It's not usually 6 months to a year and a half. If you go in with the mindset and run the playbook of a large enterprise where you're trying to get in, you can overcomplicate the conversation, is the best way that I can put it. Let me talk to the CFO, understand what you guys have budgeted for your next project stuff where you've got, and they're not even thinking that. They're manufacturing widgets. It wasn't even their minds, right? And they're manufacturing widgets. They're not thinking about the resource planning for their IT department to help go digital, move to the cloud, adopt agile processes, whatever it may be. So that kind of comes with experience because there's such a diverse portfolio of candidates within the mid-market client set or prospect set. You've really got to do your homework on that company and make some assumptions based off of the size of the org, the size of the department. Now, I've worked with software application development companies who have 500 employees. Every employee or the type of people that we place. So they do have their stuff together. They do know what they're looking for. Where if you've got a widget manufacturer, they don't know what kind of resources they actually need.
Right. So it sounds like maybe the mid-market sales a little bit more consultative.
100%. 100%. And it was, coming when I first joined the staffing world as a career, it was large enterprise. And coming before that, selling IT outsourcing to hospitals and healthcare, 100% consultative sales, right? And the second company I was with in my staffing career, I spent my time learning about mid-market. And when I layered on some of the basic processes that I learned in the large enterprise sales cycle, combined with the solution sales cycle, that's when I started winning. And it's a combination of both.
What was a part of each that felt like important that like really works well together?
The consultant sale, well, I say consultative, but I really mean more advisory, right? So when I'm working with these client base, they really appreciate working with a company who's been around for 25 years. We've got established relationships. We've got clients who've been with us for 20 plus years, right? So that lends some credibility so when they goes, how can we, I've advised companies on how to set up a talent acquisition strategy inside their organization. I mean, I make my money from placing people inside that company, but to be that advisor to help them along those lines, because we have that expertise, adds that additional value into that cycle, which helps build credibility and helps establish long-term relationships, because this is not a career where you're working one deal and then moving off to the next company. It's long-term repeatable relationship.
It sounds like for you guys, at least, you saw this opportunity in the mid-market, or maybe you tested it first and it worked out. But it basically sounds like mid-market's booming. Would you say that in today's market, enterprises have become less desirable and mid-market is like the way to go? Or do you feel like both are needed and essential for your sales motion to be successful?
It's a great question, right? And I've been in this industry long enough to see the ebbs and flows of different markets. So what I see in the softer market, we're not in a recession, we're in a softer market, right? But these larger companies have resources at hand to continue down the path of some of these projects with the resources they have without having to add contingent labor to be able to execute. They might not be executing on the larger projects and programs that they had earmarked originally for the year because the, decreased revenue cycles and whatnot. So what we've seen is it's still a critical part. It's not like we're walking away from our large enterprise accounts and business, right? But it's slowed down. What has not slowed down has been the mid-market client base that we've got. Certainly not on mine, whether that's I don't believe it's an anomaly. I'm a believer in diversified portfolio of clients. I work with anywhere from 12 to 18 clients at any given time, just depending on volume and projects and what's going on. What I have seen is a different classification of labor in the technology and digital space that people are looking for. So the companies on the mid-market side, and just to address your question on the different side and why mid-market is really what I believe mid-market is spirit is, mid-market doesn't have the latitude to have a whole bunch of people, right? And they've got a necessary project that they've got to pull the trigger on. They can't lean on their existing team. They don't have enough people there. So they will rely on those ebbs and flows. Now, there's other things that come in with that, right? Pricing pricing pressure, getting those things right. But my business has not decreased through the soft market. It actually has increased a little bit, right? Our mid market is hitting at like probably 107% of plan right now, which is, unbelievable. And again, that could be our client base versus some other comparative, but the diversification absolutely helps. But yeah, I think that's what's driving it. Like they don't have the resources to do what is necessary to do versus sometimes the company wants to move off to the cloud or a company wants to adopt agile processes, as I mentioned.
If I'm a company similar to where Synergis was 5 years ago, where I only had an enterprise motion, what would be the factors or considerations, or what must be true in order for my company to decide if we should go after a mid-market motion?
For me, when you talk about large enterprise, a lot is established processes, rinse and repeat kind of activities, because you're going in and in the large enterprise, you are drinking from a fire hose very often and getting a lot of work coming in at the same time. You're not getting that close touch with the people you need to know who are transferring that knowledge to you to be able to provide a successful outcome. So you have, here's the steps we take, follow, boom, 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 boom. When you get into the mid-market and you're looking to explore getting into the mid-market side of things, given the nature of it is far more consultative and advisory, I think you either need to upskill your existing sales team or you need to bring in more domain knowledgeable people to be able to go out and market to that segment. It is just because they don't have the same pressures as a large enterprise doesn't mean that it's not just as valuable of a market, but they need more information very often. They need a little bit more hand-holding and education for them to come to the same conclusions that the large enterprises have already come to, right? In whatever you're talking to. So I think really it comes down to just your understanding of your product and your solution in a little bit more depth to be able to have those more, transparent conversations with your audience.
Nice. Maybe just drawing on like alternative or different sales experience too. I think a lot of our listeners are going to be folks who are smaller vendors, let's say, seed, Series A style startups who've only been around for a couple of years, and they're going to want to sell into mid-market enterprise where you have a lot of experience. What do you think are some of the value pitches surrounding why established companies, larger companies, mid-market enterprise companies choose to work with small vendors like some of our listeners? Again, I'm calling it out as maybe from your past experience because it sounds like because, Synergis has been around for 25 years, they don't come across as like a small vendor or a startup per se. But yeah, I think I'm just kind of curious your thoughts kind of surrounding how do you pitch yourself in the right way to mid-market enterprise if you are a small company that isn't used to getting the big contracts?
Given that I'm in the Atlanta market, and that might be a geographic difference, I have watched, by the way, we sell all over the country, but I'm a little bit more tied into the technology community locally. Atlanta's got a great startup ecosystem. It's been growing. It's phenomenal. I have seen a shift from large enterprise buyers lean more towards the smaller solutions, right? The more nimble solutions. Sometimes it's a matter of, hey, I don't need the high-priced, high-dollar IBM. I think you and I were talking a little bit about this prior. There used to be the old adage of, nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. Well, IBM comes with a high price tag, and they've got a very kind of staunch solution that they go with. But when you get a nimble group of real passionate people who've come up with a solution and real innovative way of coming about of solving a problem, especially with the adoption of AI and all the rest of the stuff coming in, buyers are listening now far more than they ever have in the past. Working with companies like NCR, for example. NCR actually put up their offices down here and attached it to Georgia Tech and are really close and tied to their incubator machine and engine. And they are keeping a close eye on the solutions that those incubators are really pushing out because they do see that value. So I don't, how do you change your shift? I think it's a matter of recognizing and getting an understanding of getting out into the market a little bit to understand what larger organizations are shifting their attention to buying from smaller players or more earlier stage companies. And I just believe like across the table, whether it's here or whether it's other areas in the country, I think it's really more of a shift to a willingness to entertain those solutions.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about, and again, this is just maybe specific to us, but we've done in the past when we've wanted to test the waters of mid-market and enterprise, we've offered design partner programs essentially where we say, listen, like, obviously you'd be taking a chance on us. We're not going to make it break the bank by any means, but you're going to get the chance to be part of our design partner program where, and again, this might be more for like software, but where we give large companies the chance to influence our roadmap and for us to build custom stuff for them that would be helpful. And like the fun part is that a lot of what we build for that enterprise or mid-market is easily, those features are easily usable to the rest of our customer base as well. So it really doesn't feel like often we're doing any sort of niche building along the way.
I've seen that happen. I've seen it, and again, it really ties into a lot of that. And I have a tendency to go out to a lot of networking events. And I'm putting a quick plug. There's a really great group in Atlanta called, and actually they've got places all around the country. It's called AI Tinkerers. And there's these smaller organizations who come in and just pitch they're individuals who pitch their idea. They're people who've kind of got into that startup mode. Some of them are into that growth mode as far as what they've got going on. And I've heard the same thing. I've heard the same people doing that, offering, hey, let's just do, let's try that sample. Let's do a test bed. Let's do a case study on trying to deliver something here. And usually there's some small dollars that are associated with that. So those organizations aren't upside down on providing that labor and that effort, but they are getting the shots, right? I mean, because again, I think the larger companies have had their solutions baked in for so long, they're not coming up with the newer ideas with, my God, the opportunities that AI and Gen AI has created.
It makes me also think about the fact that most large enterprises probably aren't thinking as innovatively as whatever solution you're bringing to them to potentially buy. And so it's sort of like you need to be able to remind yourself that you're not pitching something, super complicated, advanced, whatever, sort of like you can basically come back to the basics and just share what innovation your company offers. And you may just really blow the minds of the enterprise or mid-market folks. And I think even we found this some of our largest potential deals where we get really nitty gritty way too fast and try to explain how we're like slightly better than some other competitor or how we are focusing on a certain area. And that actually doesn't land so well with them. Like what does land is actually just bring it back to the very basic value that our software brings. And oftentimes that's more than what they've ever seen before.
I mean, a lot of it comes to the individual. I mean, that's a really, really good point. One, show up, right? Get in front of those people and have those conversations. But be genuine about it. Don't make your comparison to an established vendor when you're bringing, like a lot of times your solution is obviously a big part of it. But what you bring to the table as an entrepreneur and a technologist, I mean, shoot, they're hiring you as much as they're hiring the solution point of that as well. And I've seen there's been so many success stories coming out of Atlanta that started that was the reason that happened. It was the individuals getting in front of them and their passion for their solution.
So Warmly, and I believe many others have listened to the podcast, mostly sells to SMBs. We mostly sell to SMBs, and we're about to unlock our own version of a mid-market. We're going to see mid-market as everyone's got different kind of size ranges of what they call mid-market. Like we already talked about, I think mid-market for you guys being, I don't know, 500 to a couple thousand employees. But anyway, we're trying to figure that out, how to basically retool our SMB team to go after mid-market. So a little bit different, right? Because we're going up market, whereas you before have gone sort of down market, if you will. I wonder, let's see, what do you think are common pitfalls that both enterprise teams that need to come down market and SMB teams that want to come up market face? And let's start with the common ones, and then I'll also be curious to ask about how some of the more unique ones might differ.
So I think probably the biggest one that I've seen, at least the biggest challenge that I've experienced, right? When you've got a product or solution that it can address a wide variety of industries, right? Defining your market is huge. Understanding what your ICP or ideal client profile is absolute necessity, because just like we talked about, I could have an organization that's got 500 employees that fits squarely in our piece because most of their employees are people that I place to. I've worked with a $1 billion flooring manufacturer whose IT department only had 50 people in it. So using the benchmark of the number of employees inside the organization isn't the best way to define, for me, the best way to define what that ideal prospect might look like. So I think when you're looking at either going upstream or downstream, whichever direction you're looking at, I think it's taking a closer look and breaking down those segments. And even though your solution can address multiple places, take take one grouping at a time, because your ICP for manufacturing is going to be far different than high tech business or supply chain or whatever the case may be. And once you identify that industry, you can get a lot more targeted with your messaging, with your product delivery, with the overall solution that your product is actually delivering to that particular segment. Once you have that defined, at the very least, is probably the best starting point that you can get. But I struggle with that. I was all over. I was all over the board, and we use the tools of many salespeople, like Zoom Info and all the rest of that stuff, where you can segment it out in a lot of different ways. And there's some different tools for low hanging fruit on that side, but I think there's company profiles that you look at. There's also the individual profiles for the people who have, I kind of live in the networking world. So when I was president of the Association of Information Technology Professionals for the Atlanta chapter, that gave me access to audiences that I didn't try to sell to, but I tried to understand. And because I was in those rooms, I'd have a dialogue like, tell me, how do you respond to this vendor selling this product to you, and what makes you push them away, and what makes you bring them in? And I'd have those dialogues in those rooms without being in a high pressure situation. So I think the other challenge when you're trying to explore that area, to understand and define that, is to get involved in some of those communities, and you'd be amazed at how much access to information you get in those rooms.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. I mean, speaking of access to information, obviously a lot of the things that the folks are chatting about is around, how are AI and automation going to kind of shake things up in sales? I'm curious, both for your enterprise motion and now your mid-market motion, what AI tools or automation type tools are driving good results for your own team right now?
Boy, there's a lot of stuff. When you talk about, like, we use a very specific software to our industry called Bullhorn. There's a lot of AI automation attached to that. But if you think about the various processes, a lot of that is just reach out. I sell a product who can decide that it doesn't want to be sold. Right? For lack of better terms, right? So if I'm placing somebody and they say, I don't want to have this job, they don't want to have this job. So what we're trying to do is use automation and AI to better at least get a better grouping of people who may be more apt either for an industry or for a role or a type of company. That's one tool. From a just straight up day-to-day sales activity, my God, just the messaging alone, like the salespeople who are not utilizing Gen AI. By the way, another plug, I had somebody recommend this to me, and for your audience, Claude.
Oh, Claude. That's so funny you say that. Their ads are all over SF. I was just there and I tried it out myself, and oh yeah, really, really great. Super simple to use.
I'm a very conservative writer in my messaging. I was always very, very, very proud of it. And I'm like, I don't need an AI tool to do my writing for me. Mm-hmm. And then I plugged it in, like somebody made this suggestion. I'm like, let me take this messaging that I traditionally use and plugged it in here.
Yeah.
I just got angry because it was so much better than anything that I could have put down myself.
That's crazy. How about on the flip side? Any trendy AI tools that you've tried that haven't lived up to the hype?
There's so many out there. I have an operations team who's kind of played around with a lot of that stuff. One of the things that I think we tried, and this is a Synergis thing. There's a lot of AI tools for just general reach out to our existing. We've got contractors all over the country, so we need to stay in touch. We need to maintain those relationships, uncover new opportunities, the whole nine yards. And we try to automate that. We went through it was an AI tool. It was a little bit survey based, a little more bot, and it was very specific to what we do again. But I think the one thing in our industry specifically, I think anybody in sales have to realize there's only so much automation you can do, because once you get taken away, once you move so far away from that one-to-one interaction and relationship, the more you start falling off from genuine and having that unique, because people are buying from you. They're not just buying your solution, right? We have a team that kind of manages those relationships, and we have a regular cadence that they're basically responsible for 100 or so contractors that they maintain relationships with, and they've got a formulaic place. But those people have someone who will listen to their concerns.
We got to wrap things up in just a moment, but before we go, one of my favorite questions to ask is, what's something I should have asked you about but didn't, in terms of your role, process, or how you built this new mid-market team?
Industry is tough. Right. I would say the one thing that was maybe like, how are we bringing on new talent in to build our sales team? Right. And that is something that we're facing right now. as we're continuing to grow to get to that next step, as I'm trying to look at mid-market, right? And what type of personality profiles? There's an edict in our industry where you find somebody who's, they know what they're doing. They've been around here. You get somebody who can come in and really just start knocking it out of the park right away. Well, it's a different market, right? We're not talking about all face to face. There's no such thing as canvassing anymore, right? What we are going to be trying to do is look at people and building them from the ground up. And the challenge there is what are those core components of somebody's personality that's going to eliminate more risk than not of what that successful person is going to be. It's the same problem that people have had for a very long time, and how you address that as you're building sales teams. But there are tools now. There are AI tools. There are things that you can use to be able to help narrow that gap or narrow that risk amount for making those investments in those individuals.
Yeah, I think that one of the cool things to see merge that I've been witnessing is the merger of essentially evaluating software and then evaluating new hires. And as the AI gets better and better, and basically can help replace a lot of the tasks that a human, let's say a sales development representative, could do, I think we're essentially seeing a combination of the evaluation, right? Where you're seeing questions that may have ordinarily been put on the sort of software evaluation go into the hiring world, and then like for humans and the human hiring world, some of the general questions you would typically put toward and think about for a human have been being asked in the software world. And I think it's really cool to see how that's coming together. But I don't know what your take on it is.
Just like a lot of things, there's a balance in everything and how you look at delivering that. There's no way that I could ever move away from my own gut to say somebody's got the capability of doing this job well. Has my gut always been right? No. But when I augment it with a little bit more science, with some of these tools that are coming in, or have started off with the tools and making an initial selection of a group and then using my gut and my instinct, it's that combination of factors. And that applies to just about everything that we're talking about, because sales is such a relationship driven effort. I think the more you know about your product and solution, the more you're able to leverage innovative technologies to be able to come in, but never forget about that, your own instinct and what you personally bring to that table to have those one-on-one interactions. That's always the combination of the two is how you win. If you eliminate one or the other, that's when things start falling off.
Yeah, really well said, Steve. And I think that's actually an awesome note to end the podcast on. Really thank you for being on Revenue Rebels. You, sir, are a Revenue Rebel building this new team. And I hope that our listeners have learned a thing or two, whether they're having an SMB motion, I think to mid-market, an enterprise motion moving down. I think good takeaways all around. Steve, thanks again for your time today.
It's been fun, Max. Really appreciate you having me on.
Of course. All right. See ya.
See ya.